All right, so we have a whole team of students in my lab that work with the spiders. Actually started a couple of years ago with some undergraduate senior students who developed the first iteration of this spider scanning architecture, which we actually, first model we worked on with Tomas in his lab. We then created an iteration of that setup at MIT, and we had a whole group of capstone or senior design students working on a first iteration of this model. We then began to hire a couple of undergrad students, Nyosha and Markus most recently, and we have a graduate student, Isabel, who does her PhD, who's working on a PhD right now on three-dimensional spider webs and all the aspects around it. And this group of students and others who helped have created the setup where we can do the scanning. I already mentioned we have sheet lasers to scan the web. We have it darkened up, kind of like a studio where we can make sure there's no reflection from the side. We want to focus really only on the web structure that we light up. And we have a bunch of electronics. I'll talk maybe a little bit more about that later. So we can automatically scan the web. And you can imagine spiders like to build webs at night when it's dark. They do sense day and night, and they like to build webs at night. And watching spiders build webs could take up to 3 or 4 days. And so in the early iteration, the students actually had to be in the lab for a couple of days to watch the spiders build the web, which is not very, that might not be a lot of fun to be in the basement lab for a couple of days. And so we created actually an automatic process by which we can then scan the webs, and we can actually now remotely scan the web. We can detect all the images, store the images, and you can imagine there's a lot of data. So practically, there's a lot of practical challenges with doing this because it produces many, many terabytes or petabytes of data by scanning the web over and over again to watch exactly what the spider does during construction. Actually, Nyosha in the summer and in the fall this year has done a lot of work in making that happen. And you kind of see what Nyosha has studied here. This is a little web in the back that she has created as one in the front. You can see the sheet laser lighting it up. And this whole process results in the kinds of movies, illustrations as one this year. So this is real data. And this is the sheet laser kind of going through the web. And you can see how as you go through the web, it lights up different sections, and you can see there's this dense region. You've seen that region before, where it's like a mesh-like structure. And you go through, and you can see how there's a lot of internal structure. This data now, these slices of images, are used to reconstruct a three-dimensional model using mathematical equations. Kind of see how we get up in the other side. So a lot of details in there, what that looks like. Again, so there's the workflow of these experiments goes like this. We have the spider, the living spiders, in the frame. We feed them, and they build the web. And so this is the actual real web photograph. This is based on the sheet laser images. And then we construct a three-dimensional model of exactly this web that lives in a computer. And I'm going to show you in a moment why we need the web in a computer. For one reason, we can do a lot of manipulation analysis in a computer. We can analyze the data. We can transform the spider web into a musical instrument. You can already imagine this spider web has a lot of strings. And if you pluck on a string, it makes a sound. And so one of the applications of this web is we've used this web to create a new kind of musical instrument where we can actually interact with the web, not only by watching it and seeing it, but actually by using it as a musical instrument and understanding how to sound, what a web sounds like, and to explore the space that way. So this is why we have a 3D model. We can also, of course, do analysis of the stages of construction of the web by watching the spider build the web over a period of time. That's another view, and you can very nicely see this is one of the earlier webs we have scanned, and you can see that it has this really interesting tent structure in the middle here, right? That's a real web, and that's the model we've constructed in a computer. And this reconstruction of the model is a very complicated process algorithmically, where we take the data, the slices, and you can see there's complications because the data doesn't come in pixels that are clear, right? So you can see there's a shade of color, different intensities. We translate it into a grayscale image, ultimately into a binary image. We stack the images, and then we use an algorithm to reconstruct a three-dimensional connectivity. So this creates the actual model. The real model of the web ultimately consists of nodes that are connected, and it tells us what nodes are connected to what other nodes, right? And this is what defines the spiderweb geometry. So as a discussion, I'd like you to think about two things. First of all, we have seen a lot of analysis now of reconstructing three-dimensional webs into a model, and we've done this providing a MATLAB code to stack the images and create a three-dimensionally connected node model. And I want you to think about what kind of computer code have you written? Have you written any code? What's your favorite programming language? And what kind of projects have you worked on? And maybe if you need a new project, would you imagine maybe working on reconstructing a spider web from data like this?